the Kashmir press, the Jammu and Kashmir, the Valley especially, the Urdu newspapers, etc. Every year used to say that ये आ रहे हैं, ये आ रहे हैं, ये आ रहे हैं, यहाँ आके बैठ गए, ये हो गया, वो हो गया. So थोड़ा सा cry wolf वाला scenario भी था, that okay, every time you think you can't go and investigate everything. It's such a vast area, and even sending a patrol out, if the patrol comes back alive, you got to be thankful. It's impossible. And if a patrol is out, they can be spotted by these guys coming from 7-8 kilometers away. वो तो इधर उधर पत्थरों में सांगर वांगर में घुस जाएंगे. It's very difficult to tell. They had actually come down to Dras and bought cement and taken it up. Not only did their bunkers, the sangars are such that, unless you hit them with RCL guns and rockets, RPGs, where then they become death traps, because then the rocks also splinter and the guy doesn't stand a chance. I had actually crossed over. I was shooting for the army, and the chief of staff that time, he rang up and he asked me, he said, will you go across? We'll sort these bastards out. He's like, we owe them a lot, yeah. We don't realize it. And all we need to do is be solidly behind them. That's all that they ask for. और कुछ नहीं चाहिए जवान को.
So today marks the 25th anniversary of Kargil Vijay Diwas, a day that honors the bravery and sacrifice of the Indian Armed Forces during the Kargil War of 1999. This is when India pushed back the Pakistani intruders after engaging in fierce battles at key locations like Tiger Hill and Tololing. Joining me today is renowned military historian Shiv Kunal Verma. His recently launched book Yodha is a visual exploration of India's rich military history. The book spans from ancient epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata to the uprising of 1857. He has also written many books such as Life of an Hindustani, 1962, The War That Wasn't, The Long Road to Siachen, Courage and Conviction, and more. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Sheena. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, sir. So, apart from being an author, you're also a filmmaker. And you have experience documenting the Indian Armed Forces through films, including the one on 1999 Kargil War. What are the key lessons from the Kargil conflict that you believe the Indian military should incorporate into its strategies?
Well, I was fortunate enough to actually film the war. In fact, I wasn't there in the beginning of the conflict. It took me a little bit of time. I got there towards the end of I think in end of June, towards the end of June, and then, in fact, when Tiger Hill and everything fell, I was there. Also got to see the capture of Chor Batla, etc. Now, what happened was, initially I was supposed to film with the Air Force, and because I'd done a lot of filming with the Air Force and a lot of flying with the Air Force earlier, but we decided that the air headquarters at that point of time felt that we'll do this filming subsequently, and which we did. We made a Kashoda later as a film. So during the Kargil conflict, I was very fortunate in the sense that I was given helicopter support and I could operate wherever I wanted to go, provided I had a brigadier on board with me and a higher ranking officer. So I was initially I spent a few days with 8th Division, which was in Mughalpura, in General Puri. And then I moved to Dras, where 56th Brigade was. So we saw a lot of the fighting, including the attack on Tiger Hill, before moving on to Kargil. And there I used to literally fly around all over the place. As a result, because we had helicopters, one could go to places like Batalik. See, the press could not go beyond a certain point. Up till Dras, Mushko and all. Mushko bhi nahi jate the, they were in that area only. So because of this facility which I had, and because getting to Batalik, for example, was 5 days from the roadhead. Tololing and all that were on the main national highways. So they were, easy to access. Even the press was there. They were shooting in that area. Not only Batalik, but then even toward the Hanif sector, which leads up to Siachen, which is the Chor Batla region, etc. One got to operate there. So one saw the war from a very, not only a close perspective, but I am also my own cameraman. So I was shooting my own film. But after that, initially we controlled all the footage which went out, because I was helping the army set it up. I wasn't working for anybody. I just sort of went. And After that, even the prisoner of war and everything, they were there, which was, Pakistan were denying it. They said कि ये मुजाहिद हैं और ये हमारे नहीं हैं and all that. So there were 8 of them. I filmed those chaps also. They were in conversation with me and we aired it internationally because Pakistan then had to admit that they're their guys. So they told us everything. They said कि साहब हम यहाँ से यहाँ गए, हमको snow boots issue हुए. They were from Northern Light Infantry and we established that. And the Pakistani Air Force had sent an aircraft and then they went back to Pakistan. The lessons that we actually learned from the Kargil War was that you really can't let your guard down. It's that area used to never be patrolled earlier. It used to be patrolled. We had 1-to-1 independent brigade there. A brigade is basically 3 battalions, and 3 battalions at full strength is about 3,000 men. And that is a huge, humongous sector, you have to understand that from Zojila, when you say Kargil War, we think of Kargil town, and you think it's a limited area, but it was almost fought over a 200, 300 kilometer span. And in that terrain, with the kind of, most hostile terrain in the world. So, Pakistan to that extent succeeded in making us Siachinize the area. Now, today we have a whole corps, we have a whole division sitting there, and the numbers have gone up. And, earlier, we used to patrol that area. There used to be a lot of reports and all that Pakistanis are rahe, ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai, but there's no doubt that there was some sort of an intelligence failure, and we were caught completely by surprise.
Yeah, sir, I was coming to that question only. Like, India failed to detect the Pakistani intruders, and there was a tip-off by Shepard later on, which now this failure could be attributed definitely to geographical location of the region as well. What do you think as a military historian? How do you analyze the factors leading up to the events which followed in the Kargil sector in 1999? Also, follow-up question, what can we learn from that experience in order to bolster the overall surveillance and intelligence gathering in such a geographical region? Because you talk about that in your book as well, the impact of geographical region in warfare.
See, the problem with the Dras sector, Dras is the second coldest place on earth. Used to be. After climate change ke baad, I don't know what is exactly happening there. And even in Siachen, initially when we went into Siachen in 1984, it was very difficult. We were losing a lot of men, altitude, terrain, avalanches, crevasses. But after a while, even a sector like Siachen stabilizes. You get your huts, you make your helipads, you have a few points where they can cross over, you man those, you fight it out, you rotate your troops, nobody stays there more than 3 months. But this sector somehow has always been, because Siachen is so extreme, and nobody ever really paid much attention to what we call the Mashko and the Gurez. From Gurez onwards, the whole Mashko region starts. Mashko, Kaksar, then you come to the Kargil area, and then you come into Batalik, and so on and so forth. Then Chorpatla, and then Hanif sector, going up till the Turtuk area, which is the base of the Siachen Glacier. The entire issues here are that the conditions here actually are worse than even in Siachen. You get something like 30-40 feet of snow. You make a bunker, you'll get completely. So, as a result of this, both the Indian and the Pakistani sides used to vacate these posts during winter because it's actually criminal to put troops there. So, there were a lot of reports. There are two major forms of intelligence. One is tech-int, which is technically, and that doesn't really work in an area like this because of the high quantum of snowfall, especially during winter. You have cables, you have cameras, you have this, that, but it's impossible to man it. You can't even fence this area because even if you fence it, the snow will take it. Snow, like water, is a very powerful thing. Human int is the only thing you are left with. More than the shepherds, what had actually happened was there was a helicopter sortie also, where GOC 3 Division was on board. There was another officer who was commanding 27 Rajput. So they had actually flown. Even before the shepherds came up with this stuff, they saw a sangar. And they could see footprints in the snow leading into it. So, if they're footprints, they won't last more than 24 hours. The footprints going into a sangar, it's obvious there's a guy inside. So they circled, cheetah, they circled the area, and then the guy came out. He came out. He had a, he was wearing whatever he was wearing, and he had a weapon in his hand. So, but again, it was seen as an isolated, infiltration or whatever, because nobody dreamt that they'll actually come into this area. The other thing which was also happening was that the Kashmir press, the Jammu and Kashmir, the Valley especially, the Urdu newspapers, etc., every year used to say that ये आ रहे हैं, ये आ रहे हैं, ये आ रहे हैं, यहाँ के बैठ गए, ये हो गया, वो हो गया. So वो थोड़ा सा cry wolf वाला scenario भी था, that okay, every time you think you can't go and investigate everything. It's such a vast area, and even sending a patrol out, if the patrol comes back alive, you got to be thankful. It's impossible. And if a patrol is out, they can be spotted by these guys coming from 7-8 kilometers away. वो तो इधर उधर पत्थरों में सांगर वांगर में घुस जाएंगे. It's very difficult to tell. So we were definitely surprised. Not only were we surprised, these bunkers, etc., had been constructed over a period of time. They had actually come down to Dras and bought cement and taken it up. Not only did they, their bunkers, the sangars are such that, unless you hit them with RCL guns and rockets, RPGs, where then they become death traps, because then the rocks also splinter and the guy doesn't stand a chance. But artillery fire comes in a sloping thing. So if you got enough overhead cover and he's inside the rocks, kitna bhi aap maroge, he'll still be in a position to fight. So we were taken aback. We also grossly underestimated the strength of the number of infiltrators. And just before the infiltration was actually discovered and 8th Division was moved up from the valley, etc., there had been a very interesting exercise in the valley where they officers who subsequently commanded this entire operation, they were the red and the blue sides, and they actually talked about infiltration. And one of the things which was discussed was that we will get into this. As the Indian version of the Pakistani commander said, I'm going to go and infiltrate from here. And all the intelligence and everything that we had indicated it's not possible. कि आप नहीं कर सकते, आप एक कंपनी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा भेज दो, you won't be able to do it. So these things have been ruled out in that exercise. So mentally also these guys were further taken by surprise, because that's exactly what happened. थोड़ी ना वो भी तो they're also evolving. You got drones, all right, I'll make a tunnel. Okay, you can dig me out from you can have sensors for I'll do something else. So it's a running battle. And also remember that it was an undeclared war. It's another form of terrorism. Because if you declare war, India is at war with Pakistan or Pakistan is at war with India, it's a different ball game. This is an undeclared war. This is a form of terrorism only, because you're coming in and you're taking the first shots at the guys. So we are going to have casualties whether we like it or not. And we have to understand one thing, that since 1987, ever since Ziaul Haq, I think 89 more accurately, launched Operation Tupac, which was the low intensity warfare, and that we are going to make India bleed with 1,000 cuts, etc. This has been their modus operandi, and it's very difficult to. They will always have the advantage because they are the initiators of the evil action. And you do take initial casualties. There will be, your intelligence has to be top draw to be able to counter it. So it's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, you see what's happening in Jammu right now, etc. It takes years of creating a grid. It takes years to have built up human int. It takes years to do things. And also, troops come into an area, then they move out because suddenly there's pressure somewhere else. So these are real problems which commanders today face in modern warfare.
So you mentioned Jammu and Kashmir. There has been a recent increase in terrorist incidents in the valley. How do you assess the current security situation in the region, and also what measures do you think we can take to counter the threat of cross-border terrorism?
See, basically the Jammu region, when you say Jammu region, you don't really mean Jammu town, but Naushera, Rajouri, Punch, right up till this whole area. It's very contiguous. I mean, Mirpur, Kotli, these are areas in 1947-48 we had major problems in. And this area is part of the foothills. It's the Shivalik area. It's lots of cover, a lot of forests, a lot of caves, a lot of rocks. A man can disappear in this area very easily. And it's not easy to flush them out. In my opinion, this area has always been one of the most vulnerable areas. In fact, the people who are the handlers of this whole Pakistani low-intensity warfare, they have been focusing more on the valley because valley gave them more publicity. But actually, this is the area where you would have the same amount of effort they spent in the valley. If they had actually spent in the Jammu area, they would have a higher dividend, or it would be more difficult for us to counter it. Now, the Jammu region, this entire belt from north of Akhnur, the whole Toti heights, everything right up till Punch. इसमें वही hit and run again. He's got the advantage of firing first. He knows what the army SOPs are, etc. And also, what had happened is that once the terrorism seemed to have died down in the valley, then we also sort of thinned out from some of the areas because we didn't want to hold on to everything. So these grids got tampered with, and they are watching you. They are watching everything. I'll give you one example. In 1995, I had actually crossed over. I was shooting for the army, and the chief of staff that time, he rang up and he asked me, he said, "Will you go across?" I had an Associated Press card. So they had told these chaps that I'm from the BBC. And the guy who was the Lieutenant General of that area, he was wanting to surrender to us. So he was told, before you surrender, just facilitate my crossing over. So I had gone across. In fact, I've written about it in Hindustani in great detail. I got blindfolded. It was on the New Year's morning. My elder daughter was just born. I'd only seen her once in Bombay, and it was crazy. I was with these guys for 4-5 days. And what was the conversation? It's really interesting. I mean, they would talk about the individual characteristics of commanding officers of Indian Army battalions on the other side. अरे 10 बिहार उसका सीओ तो बड़ा यार एम्बिशियस बंदा है, उसको हायर कमांड के लिए जाना है, तो वो उसकी his troops will be out at 6 o'clock in the morning. The other guy, he knows he's very passed over, he's not going to do anything, his guys will come out. He's not bothered. He doesn't have the fire in the belly. This is the kind of analysis these guys were doing. And let me tell you, they state-of-the-art equipment. They had radio sets which were much better than what we had. I'm talking about 1995. Their weapon systems, everything. And more than anything else, was the fact that they get to fire the first shot. And that first shot, and our officers are always leading. वो सबसे पहले तो वो officer के ऊपर जाएंगे ना, ठाक ठाक. They'll drop the guy. It takes a lot of courage to lead from the front. And one thing for the Indian Army, I mean, Pakistani Army, they don't. The officers don't lead from. It's the JCOs and they that I'm talking about the regular army. In this case, it's a different story altogether. So, yeah, it's a one hell of a challenge. And actually, what is happening in Jammu right now? But let's be very frank. Every time there is a shift in operations. Now they've come into this area. They're striking a different army formation. They're not hitting the same area again and again. Give the army that little bit of time. They will change their SOPs and they will sort these guys out. It's always happened. Initially, जहाँ पे भी जब वो डोडा में आए थे, किश्तवाड़ में आए थे पहली बार, there was a lot of panic. Oh God, what's happening? But after a while, we sorted them out there too. So the army is like a lumbering elephant. It takes a little bit of time. They have their systems which have to be put into place. That's why in the northeast, the Assam Rifles is very effective because their systems are inbuilt into the units. Here, the army moves in, the ASC, the medical, this, that, everything has to move. And it takes them a little bit longer to strike. Well, things are changing, getting more mobile today, helicopter borne, special services. We'll sort these bastards out.
So let me shift the conversation towards China. We know that there is ongoing border tension between India and China in eastern Ladakh region. What steps do you think the government should take to bolster India's mountain warfare capabilities in that region?
Why do we need to bolster beyond what we've got? We are already building a lot of roads, we're building a lot of highways, we are making tracks. And I was in Arunachal 2 months ago, I was shooting there, and I went to the Namkachu Valley. And earlier, I mean, even though I'd written the 62 book and, it was our battalion and everything, I had not really been, I'd flown over the Namkachu, but not gone into it. But now when I went there, I found there was a jeep track going up to Latungla. And even safaris, we couldn't take them beyond a point. Those vehicles were too heavy. We got a gypsy. And the road was nothing but a churned mud. We were probably going at 1 kilometer an hour. Every time the gypsy got stuck, 4 of us would jump out, pick it up, shove it on slightly harder ground, keep moving. But when I was talking to the JCO there was a Maratha battalion there, and they said, Ki, now things are different. Pehle, ammunition, water, food, everything was man-packed basis. Even if they came and dropped from aircraft and all that, उसको उठा के लाना, पोस्ट में लाना बड़ा मुश्किल होता था. यहाँ पे हतुंगला में अगर मेरे 15 आदमी होते तो मैं I'd be very happy. I could cram it with 300, but I have to feed those 300. I have to make tea for them. I have to make food for them. I have to give them ammunition. Where would they stay? Now the roads have come. The vehicles are getting here. मरते आ रहे हैं, but आ रहे हैं. Today that JSO says I can have 300 men on this post. Enough ammunition to fight for 2 months. Let's see how they're going to get past us. And don't forget, in the end, in mountain warfare, it doesn't matter what your strength is in behind you. Eventually, it is that one platoon versus one platoon. So where is going to come and clash? If we can't get past the first platoon, where is he going to go? So our situation is, well, we are doing a lot, especially in the northeast. In Arunachal, we're opening up the Magochu Valley. We are opening up all kinds of things where earlier getting there was impossible. Now things are happening. Helicopters have been a major game changer in the entire business. And the Army Aviation Corps also has now reached levels of, it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, they will fly. It gives you a lot of confidence. You know, if I have a problem, medical problem, I have a casualty, choppers will come. Doesn't matter what the weather. If the weather is absolutely extreme, they may not be able to get there, but they will come, and that gives you a lot of this thing. The men in the front posts, all they require from the rest of the country is that we are solidly behind them. They know that they will give everything. They will die there. They will not move an inch. And that was the biggest difference, between 62 and Kargil. I've often been asked this question: what was the biggest difference between 1962, because I wrote that book, The War That Was, and the Kargil conflict. And I've always said this: in 62, because of bad leadership, the men were willing to fight, but they were not properly led. But in Kargil, I'm not just talking about the army. I'm talking about civilian truck drivers. I'm talking about porters, Ladakhi porters, everything. And artillery fire is coming from 28 kilometers away, so it's a lottery. I mean, they're firing from there, and if it hits you, and you'll just be blown to bits. But not a single guy. Not a single guy was faltering. Everybody was moving forward. Everybody was moving forward. So from 62, everybody was moving back. It was a big change. And I think India is a very different country today. And I think the Indian Army especially, not just the Army, I would say the same thing for the ITBP and various other security forces. We owe them a lot, yeah. We don't realize it. And all we need to do is be solidly behind them. That's all that they ask for. और कुछ नहीं चाहिए जवान को.
Right. So now that we are talking on the occasion of Kargil Vijay Diwas, we know that India has fought major wars with Pakistan, 48, 65, 71, and the Kargil War of 1999. What do you think, in your opinion, do you anticipate any other possibility of future military confrontation with Pakistan? Because we know that this is a country which is in conflict with TTP, Afghanistan, skirmishes, and a lot going on with Pakistan. It's in a weak position. What do you think, what should be India's strategic posture in order to make sure that it deters such aggression if it happens?
First point is, never underestimate your enemy. Do not think Pakistan is in a weak position. I mean, their army is it's a country. Most countries have armies. There's an army with the country. Okay, their survival depends on their ability to keep fingering us, which they will. And they are also professionally pretty good. Their soldiers they're the same as ours. Yeah, there's no difference. Only thing is, their leadership has always been a little over-ambitious, and sometimes they have bitten off more than they can chew, and they don't have that. They're more flamboyant in their approach. So they tend to trip and fall over on their own feet. Now you look at 47, 48. what did they do? They infiltrated, they sent in various Lashkars, they did all that. The Pakistan army officially remained in the back and said, no, we are not involved. 65, they came in again. In my book, I've also written the 65 book, Your Western Sunrise. And, one of the things which most Indian authors claim is that there were about 30,000 infiltrators. I tend to agree with the Pakistani version that there were about 12,000. Even 12,000 is a hell of a lot. One column was going towards Kargil, one column was going here, one column was going here, right out in Samba in Jammu, and this entire area. There again, they were in denial mode. Ki hamare hai nahi. They are mujahids. We don't know who they are, etc., etc. And again, what happened in 65 is very interesting because the Western Army commander that time was General Harbaksh Singh. And though Harbaksh Singh in 65, in my book also I have said he made a few tactical errors here and there, but he was a very aggressive general. The moment they came and they started threatening the valley, especially, what he did was he went for Hajipir, which was behind them. And once we took Hajipir, their exit route was gone. अब आपका पीछे का दरवाजा बंद हो जाता है, then you start wondering, अब क्या करूँ मैं? And they didn't know what to do. And we took Hajipir. Once we took Hajipir, they then made another mistake. They went in and they attacked us in Jammu, Operation Grand Slam. And I think, and I've argued in my book, I believe that Operation Grand Slam happening in Jammu, though we lost territory initially when they really came at us, was actually a blessing in disguise. Because if you look at what happened even in 71 and everything, I believe that they had already planned this attack. And this was actually going to come at Fazilka and Firozpur, that axis over the Husainawala axis. That got derailed in the process. Because if you look at the preemptive strikes and everything, you put it all together, you can game plan as to what the enemy is thinking. 71, both sides were pretty unimpressive in the western sector. But again, it was Pakistan who went for the larger bite at the cherry. They came into Longewala. You said their bad luck, they ran into hunters and they got shot up like crazy. Then 40 tanks were destroyed and all kinds of things happened. But the boldness of action was always coming from the Pakistani side. हमारी जो strength है ना, where we tend to absorb that initial thrust, but then we start hitting back, and when we are more, what should I say, up till the 65 and 71 wars, most of the commanders were fighting a war of attrition, which gets lost because 65 and 71, again, everybody talks about the tank battles and this, that, but the tanks are moving. It wasn't like Europe, they were sweeping across 300 kilometers a day or something like that. But all the focus went on to that. But actually, it was a war of attrition. It was again infantry versus infantry. So, in this, we have always somehow, I think we performed better than the Pakistan army eventually, because the Pakistan army has another terrible disadvantage. They don't have depth. Lahore is only 12 kilometers or 14 kilometers from the border. वो कहाँ जाएगा? So he has to fight a defense. Even if he is initially offensive, he has to sooner or later fight a defensive battle. The moment you strike at him, he has no place to go. So their whole system is based on the Achigul Canal, this, that, and the other. Will there be another conventional war? I don't know. Anybody's guess. But like what's happening in Jammu right now, etc. We have to reserve the right to be able to hit Pakistan anywhere they want. We want. And that is what Shastri had advocated in 1965, that if you go into Kashmir, I will not stay restricted to Kashmir. I'll hit you guys in Punjab, I will hit you in Rajasthan, I'll hit you in Gujarat. So he changed the entire equation. So similarly, if they're going to keep on fingering us in Jammu and Nowshera and Poonch and this entire belt, now they're even coming into the Yol sector in 9 Fine. Then we hit them back at Balochistan, we hit them here, we hit them there. But one thing we've got to be careful about, we can't keep talking irresponsibly also. There's been a lot of talk about we'll take POK, we'll do this, we'll do that. Yeah, थोड़ा सोच के बोलो. First, consolidate, be careful about what you want. And do you really want to take POK? Do you really want to do all this? Because you are dealing with a nuclear state eventually. But actually the thing to do with Pakistan is answer them. If they kill one, kill 10. And this has always worked. When General V.K. Singh was the chief in 2010, they had beheaded a couple of our guys. And they have the BAT, the special forces inside. जब उनके 3-4 मारे गए और 6-7 के सिर कट गए तो फिर they stopped doing it. The last thing they want is their head cut. So it's very nice to cut your head, not cut mine. But the moment you cut mine, then start thinking. So you got to deal with this in a very powerful way. And I think this particular government, Balakot and all that, have established the will that we will react if you push us. Earlier we used to ले लेते थे, चलो एक और अटैक हो गया, कोई बात, एक और नहीं होगा, फिर दूसरा होता था, कहते थे तीसरा नहीं होगा. तो ये इस सरकार ने एस्टैब्लिश कर दिया है कि हम वी आर विलिंग टू फाइट बैक एंड वी विल हिट यू with 3 times the power that you hit us. That's the only way. Nobody respects any other language.
So just to wrap up the conversation, your father, a veteran of 1962 and 1971 wars, must have shared many stories, experiences from those conflicts. Can you share any memorable anecdotes that have shaped your understanding of India's military history?
My dad, he was too Rajput, and that's the battalion which took the brunt of the Chinese attack on the Namkachu. We lost 282 men in a matter of a few hours. My mother, when I was 3 months or 4 months old, we were at Teju, which was the rear of the battalion, the rear headquarters. The battalion was in Wolong at that time. Then they were actually de-inducting when they were sent up to Namkachu. I've grown up in an environment where I was 2 years old when the 62 war happened, and it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster, and our families were ripped apart. I mean, हमारी तो पूरी खानदान ही उड़ गया ना, because your battalion is your family. I mean, it doesn't matter where the hell you're from, etc. The men matter more than anything else. That's what the whole culture was. Even as a 2-year-old, I remember the sheer horror of what happened, and it stayed with us. It's not कि 1 साल हो गया, 2 साल हो गया, अब भूल गए. नहीं हुआ. They were officers' families who were intertwined with, linked with us for years. And their pain was our pain, that kind of a thing. So we grew up in this very with the shadow of 62. My father died in 2015, but he never recovered from what happened in 62. He survived the war because he was posted to IMA, Indian Military Academy in Dehradun. वो बच गए. But his whole comrades were killed. So a lot of that seeped onto me as well. I wrote the 1962 book. It's firstly, the book is, I mean, I filmed the Kargil War. I've seen how people react. In the end, you want a flag on top and Mata ki Jai and Chardi Chal and all that kind of stuff. Nobody wants to read about a defeat. And 62 is a story of a terrible defeat. And yet that book has become so popular, it's now mandatory in the army, etc. Maybe if I'd written it 5 years before, it wouldn't have been. Anecdotes and what actually happened. Then again, 65, 18, my dad by that time was in 18 Rajput. By the time they deployed in the Sialkot sector, the war was over. But my chacha was involved. He fought he was in Jesoran, which is the Chavinda battle. He was with 20 Rajput. And then what happened after that? In 71, my father was commanding 18 Rajput. And they fought the battle of Akhoda. And 71, he had done, in 1969, he had been posted to the United States to Fort Benning, which is the US Infantry School and the 101 Airborne Division's headquarters. And that was a peak of the Vietnam War. I was 9 years old, and I remember hundreds of helicopters and this and that, and bodies coming in from Vietnam, all kinds of stuff. And more than the American tactics, what my dad used to claim that what he learned from was the Viet Cong tactics, how the Vietnamese were fighting the war rather than the Americans. Because the Americans were in stationary posts and they were dug in. Massive firepower, they could drop bombs from B-752s, they could do whatever. But they couldn't defeat these guys. Why? Because these guys were infiltrating, coming in and banging them. Now when the defenses in Bangladesh were created by the East Pakistan Army, by the Pakistan Army in East Pakistan, they built their defenses around village ponds and everything which were made out of, ये मट्टी के बने हुए थे. They were bunts. Artillery fire gets nullified. The shell goes into mud and boom, nothing will happen. It lands on concrete, it will blow up the whole thing. So they had very solid defenses, and the whole concept in East Pakistan was that we will hold these towns and etc. And the Indian army will come, frontal attacks, we'll knock them off. We initially did that, whether it was the Battle of Dhalai, whether it was a battle here and there. And we suffered very heavy casualties. In fact, in Dhalai, even the brigade commander was Brigadier Shiv Yadav. He was wounded. He was replaced by Brigadier Tom Pandey, who was later, his daughter married the subsequent chief, General Deepak Kapoor. So all this was going on, and then Akhoda is actually a twin city of Agartala in Tripura. And 311 Brigade consisted of 10 Bihar and 18 Rajput, and my father was commanding, and 4 Guards, which was 1 Rajput. So we had 2 Rajput battalions, and they had to capture Akhoda. And the initial appreciation of Akhoda was that if we had gone for a frontal attack, we would have lost about 200, 300, 400 men. It was anticipated. In fact, hospital beds and all were being prepared accordingly. But just before the Battle of Akhoda, there was another smaller battle at a place called Mukundpur, where they were allowed to demonstrate how they used these Viet Cong tactics of infiltration. They went in and they said, all right. And the Pakistanis sitting in these pillboxes, they used to even play Hindi music and film music, hum aa rahe hain, send out a few jitter parties, and LMGs would open up at night in a couple of rounds of traces. The Pakistanis would go berserk. They start firing in every direction, which is bound to happen. And suddenly they were running out of ammunition, and now when they had to, the attacks were not coming. So in the meantime, others had gone and placed stops behind, because it was all we were going through them rather than going head on. And Akhoda, we captured by less, I think 10 Bihar had about 20 men killed, and we had 18 Rajput had about 5 or 6. So kahan 500 casualties ki baat kar rahe hai, and kahan you were losing 25 men. And Akhoda was an absolute sweeping success. After that, they went in for the Battle of Ashuganj, which was on the Meghna. And General Manekshaw had decided, we will get to the Meghna River, we will declare this as a liberated part of East Pakistan, Bangladesh. Dhaka was never an objective. That's a well-established fact. But the Battle of Ashuganj again, it was fought by my dad's battalion, 18 Rajput. They went in on the attack. The Pakistanis, there was a brigade on this side. They were told they only 2 companies, but they went in, they found this. It was one hell of an attack. In fact, the Rajputs took quite a hammering. We lost about 40 men. We had 63 cavalry had PD-76s. They went into the attack. We lost a few tanks. And but the Pakistanis panicked and they blew up the bridge. And they, after having withdrawn across the bridge, instead of falling back toward Dhaka, they went off towards Sylhet. Moment that happened, General Sagat Singh was watching the battle from the air, and he was a very he was a very far-thinking general. I mean, he was very quick to spot a weakness. After that, he said, all right, they lifted the 3rd battalion of the brigade, which was 4 Guards, dropped them in Narsingdi, and suddenly it became a race for Dhaka. Chalo, tadi, so niklo udhar, get this. People were going on cycles, they were going on fire engines, they were going on boats. The whole thing was get into Dhaka. And the Pakistanis didn't know what the bloody hell happened. And before you knew it, the Kargil paradrop bhi ho gaya, ye bhi ho gaya. It was psychologically just built up to such an extent that they threw in the towel. 16 days, you actually liberated a country. I mean, it's unbelievable. Especially in the context that after World War II, no country has succeeded in actually creating or winning a war with sheer force of arms. It's not happened after World War II. But we did it in Bangladesh. So these are incredible things, and these are things we as a country must know. And Yodha, in fact, Volume 2 is now coming out end of August, where we go from the mutiny right up till the Kargil War. Deals with all this. Because for children, we believe that this is part of your DNA. If you don't understand military history, what the hell are you going to talk about national security tomorrow? You won't have a clue. So in fact, what we are now doing is, and I'm very happy to see this, a lot of schools where we are going and talking to them and making presentations are buying both the books for each and every child. अभी तो इसका हिंदी वर्जन भी निकालेंगे, इसका गुजराती, गुरमुखी, Tamil, every damn thing, and we want to get it to every child in India.